So it was Monday, November 13th, 1989. It was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not really quite sure. And I went to Health Center number 2 in San Francisco, pretty much knowing what my antibody test was going to say, but sat down, got called in, and was told, in fact, that yes, in fact, I was HIV positive. I remember the day really clearly because I had a meeting that afternoon of the Community Task Force to the 6th International Conference on AIDS, a group of people that were going to help give input to how the 6th International Conference on AIDS should look, given all the problems that we'd had with previous conferences, and especially with the conference in Montreal in 1989. And I went to the cafe floor to meet my roommate and friend, and she was the first person that I told. And it was within an hour of finding out I was HIV positive, I'd already come out to somebody about it. I remember when I was finishing up my discussion with the woman at the antibody testing site, they had asked, all the questions they ask after they give you your results, and I told them I do this for a living, so I know what to do. I didn't realize, though, that for the next several months I was deeply, deeply, deeply in shock. I had no problem telling people I was positive. I'd been doing AIDS activism for quite a while, and I was not ashamed of it. But reconciling a new antibody status and into my life really, really was a very slow process, although outwardly it looked like it was just happening, and I was quite comfortable saying it out loud. Internally and privately, it was a really, in retrospect, I understand to be a really life-changing moment for me, although I wasn't all that clear about it at the time. I will say that all of my friends around this time that were starting to test positive, we all sort of joked about the fact that this 1 year of kind of losing your mind a little bit after testing positive seemed to be the norm. I was 26 at the time when I tested positive, living in San Francisco with 3 other roommates and doing ACT UP, and also was working at a drug and alcohol program for gay and bisexual men. And one of the focuses that we had at this agency was HIV infection, HIV prevention, and substance abuse and substance use. And from the moment that I tested positive, and actually before that, my entire adult life had been spent doing HIV work. From the moment I tested positive, it was about me being an out HIV infected person doing HIV work and substance abuse work and whatnot. I just remember at the very beginning when I tested positive how different I felt, how alone I felt. Because at that point, not a lot of my friends had tested yet or tested positive, and I was 26 in a community that was most of the men that I knew who had HIV were older than I was. Yeah, that was when I tested positive. That was an experience. For the first couple of years of living with HIV, I was incredibly afraid of everything that went wrong with my health. Everything. I started AZT early in 1990. I went on HIV. I found out I had hepatitis C actually in 1990 also, and just remember that everything internally scared me if I got sick, because I had no idea what my prognosis was going to be. I had no idea whether or not I was going to be like all of my friends who were older than me that had either gotten sick and died or were getting sick. I had no idea what the future held for me. I wasn't given that, oh, you have 3 to 6 months to live diagnosis. I was just told I was HIV infected, and at that point, life expectancy was several years after finding out your diagnosis. I had no idea. And I had actually grown up my whole life thinking that I was going to be dead by the time I was 20. And here I was, a 26-year-old gay man, and trying to figure out my life, trying to figure out my life expectancy. So I jumped into work. I spent a lot of time and a lot of focus into work. Work became my therapy. It became the place where I really was able to focus and harness a lot of my energy and anger and passion. I loved my job, and I loved doing AIDS activism, and so they also helped me heal quite a bit because I could actually focus on changing a system, dealing with the health department, whatever it was, whatever justice or injustice it was that needed to be addressed. Having something to really, really sink my teeth into really gave me a chance to just get through this initial period of coming to realize what it was like to live with HIV. I will say that starting meds right away, I'm surprised it's 30 years, almost 30 years later, and here I am still living with HIV. I did AZT monotherapy, and then did combination therapy, AZT and DDC, and then neither of which worked to help. I mean, it was still, by the time 1998 or 97 rolled around, I moved to triple combination therapy, but therapies didn't start working for me until 2006, but that's another story. The most difficult part for me around this first year, this initial diagnosis, was how to relate sexually and intimately with some of my friends. I really thought of myself as damaged when I tested positive. Not shame, but actually that's not true. There was some degree of internalized shame that I thought I was damaged, that I was broken, that if I wasn't going to die, I was a marked man. And it made coping with HIV in the first year or so quite difficult. I thank a lot of therapy and a lot of good friends and a lot of support to actually help pull me out of that. But it was a very overarching fear for quite a while, that idea that in fact I was a risk for some people. I will say that my boyfriend at the time, and who was my boyfriend for 7 years, was HIV negative, and remained HIV negative the entire time that we were together, and to this date is still HIV negative, and for that I'm really happy and proud of him. We were able to maintain a nice, healthy, functional relationship in a serodiscordancy. At a time when people began doing that, what I call viral apartheid or serosorting, before it was meant with any kind of disease reduction, but when it was really seen as, if you're HIV positive, don't bother, asking me out. If you're HIV positive, I don't want to date you. HIV negative only, disease-free, all those sort of shame-based or disease-based sort of like separations. But I had a remarkably healthy relationship with serodiscordant, and that was great. And we had an open relationship, which also meant that we had to navigate a lot of worlds at the same time, and we were able to do that, and I was really proud of that.